Hello, today I'm going to try to demonstrate how to make Angie Esposito's famous apricot-filled cookie bars. Make sure you get the crushed pineapple in the 100% pineapple juice, not in syrup, and drain it. You can save the juice if you want. The apricots that Angie used to use were the kind that were sort of brown. These are quite a vivid orange. They're the Mediterranean apricots, and I find that they do not cook down in the pot the same way that the old-fashioned brown ones do. So what you have to do is food processor or blender. So I've been cooking the filling over a low heat and stirring it constantly and mashing it with the spoon and trying to get it into a nice consistency. This is the 16 ounces of crushed pineapple drained, 10 ounces of apricots put through the blender, half a stick of butter, a cup of chopped walnuts, and a cup of brown sugar. And it's now turned into kind of a paste. And that's just about how it should look. Now you want to beat 2 eggs and cream them together with a stick of butter, a cup of sugar, and a teaspoon of vanilla. Now in a separate bowl you want to mix 3½ cups of all-purpose white flour with a half a teaspoon of salt and 3 teaspoons of baking powder, and mix this very well so that the baking powder is well blended in. Now you want to mix the flour mixture with the butter, sugar, and egg mixture and add a 1/3 cup of milk to it. Stir it as long as you can, and then when it gets into a dough consistency, start mixing it a little bit with your hands, but don't mix it too much. Just enough to make it a workable pie crust type dough. Now as you can see, I've gotten it to the point where it's just a big blob of dough, and you don't want to handle it past that point because if you work it too much, you'll make the dough tough. So now we're going to roll it out. Now you want to take the dough and divide it into 3 equal pieces, as equal as you can get them, just eyeball it up. And take the filling and divide it into 3 equal portions, because you're going to have 3 rollouts with this dough. Each one of these is going to get rolled out, and it's going to make 3 cookie bars. So you're going to have 3 times 3, 9 cookie bars from this recipe. So now you get your parchment paper, a little bit of flour on the parchment, a little bit of flour on the dough, and try to roll it out so that you end up with more or less a rectangular shape, because you're going to be winding up cutting it into 3 strips. You want to roll it from the center very lightly toward the sides, trying to encourage it to go in a rectangular shape and trying to keep it even. You want it to be just about as thin as a pie crust, or maybe not quite as thin as a pie crust, but close. If it starts sticking to the rolling pin, just put a little bit of extra flour, but not too much, and try not to handle the dough any more than necessary. It's good if it stays a little cool and doesn't get too soft. You've got it nice and thin, like that. You want to put your filling that you've been saving over here and try to very lightly distribute it across the crust with whatever tool would work best for that. I don't think this spoon is going to be it. Maybe a butter knife would work better. And be very careful not to cut into the crust and break it. Okay, that looks just about right. Now what we want to do is cut this into 3 strips that are as equal as possible, equal thirds. And then, using a clean butter knife, we're going to flip the edges of the thirds inward. So we're folding it over. And then fold over the other side. And then we're going to pinch the edges to close the cookie up. And then we're going to flip the entire cookie over so that that seam is on the bottom. I'll try to get the edges pinched. It's hard to see what I'm doing and video what I'm doing. Okay, so that is ready to go on a cookie sheet on top of parchment, because that is easier than dealing with grease. Works better. Okay, here we are, 3 cookie bars on a cookie sheet with parchment paper, and this is going to go in the oven at 375 for about 20 minutes. Check it after about 18 minutes to make sure it's not getting too brown. They want to be just a nice light golden brown. This is a nice golden brown color for them to be, not too dark. The edges get a little darker, the ends I should say, but that's just about perfect. That was 20 minutes. Especially when they first come out of the oven, they're soft and easy to break, so it's a good idea to lift them from one pan to another using 2 spatulas like this. And if one should happen to break, you can always just cut it at that point, because you're going to slice these all up into little separate cookies. And if one of them breaks really catastrophically, just remember that the family always loves broken cookies, because then they just get to eat those. To make the frosting, you melt 2 tablespoons of butter, mix in 2 tablespoons of milk and a 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla, and then you take 1 1/4 cups of sifted confectioner sugar and add it to the mix. This looks like a lot more because I'm making a double recipe, but basically that's how it should look. So now that it's all mixed, this is the consistency of the icing, and I added orange food coloring to it because it's October. Normally at Christmas I would leave it white and just put red and green sprinkles, sugar crystals on it. But you can do whatever you like, as long as it's thin, because it should be a glaze and not an icing. So I'm going to put this on with a spatula and try to spread it nice and thin. It helps if the cookies are a little warm when you're doing it. This cookie could be a little warmer, but it's okay. The idea is for it to be smooth and not lumpy. And then if you want to put colored sugar, which I am, I'm using a yellow because I couldn't find orange. It all looks pretty orangey. You got to put it on while the frosting is still a little wet. The last step after the icing has dried and set and the cookies seem pretty firm is to cut them into cookie-sized pieces and take the little end piece off. It has not much filling in it, and let the kids have that. And put them in a container and cover them with parchment paper so they don't stick to each other. You can put paper on top and then another layer of cookies on top of that. And you're done. Angie Esposito's famous apricot-filled cookie bars.